Here we go.
Do it.
Okay, cool.
Here we go.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coffin Talkin', where we unravel the mysteries, embrace the peculiar, and find humor in the unconventional world of funerals and death. I'm Holly. I'm here with Frank.
Hi, Holly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Had some
What's going on?
Well, I had some interesting conversations with a few people this past week, whether it be by text or in person.
Oh,
And the one that I do want to share, and he may get a kick out of it. I don't know. He's an avid. He listens to every podcast that now comes down, but he commented to me that now when he's in nursing homes and he actually does, he'll know who he is, but when he does removals for us or anyone, he now, because of a couple of episodes, won't look into mirrors.
oh my God.
He sometimes gets a little weird. He recognized that, ooh, that's so cold was a nightmare for anyone that could have happened to. That's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just think that, his comments were apropos to what we'd been talking about over the past couple of weeks.
Oh my gosh.
So
I don't blame him.
And he just started, I said, hey, are you still listening to the podcast? And he just started laughing. He goes, I can't tell you how nervous I've become.
The podcast is ruining my life.
So anyway, we had kind of a little laugh about it. So anyway, hopefully you'll keep going on, bud. Yeah. Love that
keep pushing through.
Yeah, keep pushing through. Thank you so much. Oh, anyway. And then this morning had to run to Payson, and why do people have to be so healthy? They blocked off one of the major thoroughfare streets that I had to get to the Beeline Highway, and I had to go out of my way almost 40 minutes one way to get out of my way just to get double back, and then coming back was the same thing. It was terrible
For the marathon.
Darn runners.
Dang. Yeah, if you're a marathoner, you are the problem.
Yeah, don't you know that if you're healthy, you're hindering my business here?
Yeah, exactly. Come on. Let's get sick.
How's your week going?
It's good. I'm very tired. What?
Or how's it gone?
It's gone great. We have some family in town.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's family is just visiting this weekend, and so it's been really great to see everyone.
Good.
It's always fun when they just pop in, but yeah, I'm tired.
Because of all the visiting, or are you staying up later than you normally do?
I think I'm staying up later just with homework and school, and we just get to bed later now. Mm-hmm. So it's my own fault, but I haven't taken a nap in 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
And it's showing.
Anyway, yeah. I'm glad you're having family in town, but I'm sorry that it's taking its toll on you for rest. And you're neglecting yourself now for the naps.
For the naps, I know. I need the nap.
Let the coffiners know how many times you nap.
Here's the thing, is I will sit down for a nap, lay down for a nap, and if it's a good day, it's usually about 20 minutes. But if it's a bad day, it could be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. And really, it's kind of like nap roulette because I don't set a timer.
Oh.
So, whatever happens, happens. And I live with the consequences.
So how is school going?
It's great. We're just about to midterms now, so I should be studying up for those. Definitely not. And
definitely not doing the podcast, or definitely not studying?
Definitely not studying.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a good answer, Holly.
Yeah. I'm prioritizing things correctly.
I'm glad to hear it too. I'm glad to hear it. So good. All right. Well, anything else going on?
Honestly, no. It's been kind of a quiet week for us. Anything else for you?
You know what? My life revolves around 3 things: family, work, and church. And so if you ask me how things are going on any one given day, and you pinpoint one of those 3 items, I could probably tell you. But if you go outside those 3 items, I'm kind of lost because I don't do anything outside of those 3 items.
Right.
So, which is kind of sad in a way.
What would you do outside of those?
I don't know. I would really like to get back into art. So I think that that is my goal. If a couple of weeks ago you asked what my New Year's resolution is,
Yeah.
this year I just wanted to be more art related. So I've got my new pen set. I've got it going. I've got my sketch pad.
And were you big into just drawing and sketching, or was it painting?
I did a little of both, but mainly drawing, sketching.
Wow.
You've
What
seen
do you
the sketch
sketch?
I've done with Mom, haven't you?
No, I don't think so.
The headshot picture
I don't think I've seen that. Is it hanging up anywhere?
in our closet.
Wait, yes, then I have seen it.
So she must not be too proud of it. Which is fine.
Oh my God.
I mean, I never claimed to be a pro or anything, but I do like to do it just to kind of relax.
Yeah.
And, and it used to be when I had time on services or funerals when there was downtime because you'd always have to make sure that once the viewing is started and the body's been put in the chapel for the services, you have an hour and a half to kill. So I would take my sketch pad and I'd do some sketching. So, I have a lot of sketches out there, but I've never really shared them with anyone. So I probably should one of these days. So we'll see what I choose to do the rest of this year. But that has been something that I would like to go back into.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. So
I feel like this is the year for like rediscovering hobbies and talents and things like that.
Yeah. That would be interesting. So anyway, that's it. That's it for me. That's probably the only thing I would do different. If I had if I right now had to add one more thing, it would probably be, and I've had this kind of inkling to do some pottery work. And it seems kind of interesting to see how that pottery wheel spins and you're building and fabricating either a bowl or a dish or something like that, a vase. I think that would be interesting to do. Kind of fun.
That would be really fun.
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to get started into that, but
right.
I could look it up, find out where it's being taught and stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, there is the time factor.
Exactly. Well, we'll follow up with you about the art and everything on following weeks. And when we finally get video up, you'll have to show your sketches.
Okay. Yes. Okay. All right.
I'll show Nelson. You show you the sketches.
Maybe I'll show a few sketches of things from the episodes.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, because I've been trying to sketch some of the things for stories for the book. So that a little bit of illustration if people can't understand, because I'm a visual person, and if I can't understand what someone's trying to tell me, I have to visualize it in my mind before I can actually remember it, number one, and then see how it plays into whatever the story is that's being told.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, take a look at it.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll just jump in. It's time to be frank.
Thanks, Holly. So today I want to talk a little bit about idiosyncrasies. And do you know what those are, Holly?
I know it when I see it, but I don't know the definition.
So to me, it's something that someone does, and you can identify the individual strictly because they do it all the time. And so when you see it, you just say, "Oh, yeah, that's got to be, that's got to be him. That's got to be either my brother, my sister, whatever the case is." Only simple by what they say or what they do. And it becomes so evident that even if we were with them, and they didn't do it, you would say something's different. Right. Even though you couldn't pinpoint what it would be. So I want to take you in with me, the first place that I worked for at a funeral home. And I want to introduce a few of the people that I worked with. And I was thinking about this in introduction to the story that I want to tell you. And I'll end on the individual that I actually want to have the story built around. So when I first started there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 employees at the facility, 8 including me. So the 7 that I want to talk to is the first one, and you walk into, there's the receptionist, and I called her Smiley because every time I saw her, she was smiling. Didn't matter what
Mhm.
was happening. Didn't matter how busy we were, what kind of deaths we were experiencing at the time. She was always smiling, and I thought, yeah, she's perfect for that job because she's always smiling.
Right.
The next one was my general or manager of the facility, and he had a very weird idiosyncrasy, and he'd always carry a rag in his pants. And so, yeah. And so whenever he'd pass by furniture in the front lobby, he'd take out the rag and he'd take time to dust it.
Oh.
And it wasn't just a, and I thought to myself, here you are. I guess you're busy. I don't know. But you're grabbing a rag every time you walk by that receptionist desk. You're making her lift her calendar,
Right.
her notepad, whatever it is, it's on her desk, and you're making her phone. You're making her lift it while you're dusting. Goes down the legs and then moves to the next piece of furniture.
Uh-huh.
So he could be spending 45, maybe an hour every day, every morning as he walks through that lobby, just dusting every piece of furniture that comes in there. The next one was the individual that handled the records for between the mortuary and the cemetery. So whenever cemetery records needed to be updated, he would be the one to update. And so whenever I talked to him, the first thing he would say, "Hey, Frank, have you heard this joke?" And he would tell me a joke, which is fine, excepting that his repertoire of jokes was 6.
Oh, no.
So,
Got old really fast.
and he could never remember that he was telling the same joke. And so by the time the first joke was told the second time, you had to almost force the laugh.
Right.
And you almost had to pretend like you were laughing only because you wanted him to continue to tell you the jokes, right? That was your way of experiencing individuals.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, the next person I wanted to talk about was my supervising embalmer. And interesting thing with him, when I first met him, I was asked to go up into the prep room area because he was doing an embalming on an individual that had been autopsied. Now, remember back to the autopsy, it's where the thoracic, the abdominal, all that is completely opened up. The entire interior cavity of the body is exposed. And as the embalming is going on, fluids pool in that area. And I remember distinctly walking in there and then almost wanting, no, I don't throw up easily, but I almost wanted to bubble in my mouth is what we call it. Because when I walked in, there was my supervising embalmer, and I had just rang the bell to get in, and the door, of course, opened. And so I walked in, and there he was, no joke, had both hands ungloved in the cavity of the person, and it was completely filled with blood and embalming fluid. And so that's not the catch. But he and I became the best friends. But the one thing that took me a little off guard was that he saw me come in and he goes, "You must be the new embalmer." And I said, "Yes, I am. My name's Frank." And he goes, "Well, I'm so-and-so. Give me just a minute." And so he took his hands out of the cavity, just shook them like this over the cavity,
Oh my gosh.
letting the blood or whatever drain. And then he walked over and touched or turned on the spigot or the faucet, ran his hands under the water, shook them dry, came over to shake my hand, shook my hand, went back in, and then he put his right hand back in the cavity. And before I even realized what was happening, I didn't realize that it was there before, but there was a Big Mac on the counter, and he reached over with his left hand and picked it up and started eating.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh, that's sick.
It started eating it. So whenever he was embalming, and plus, remember, no gloves. There was no protection on his hands at all.
Oh.
And so, but whenever he was embalming, he would take his lunch up into the prep room and eat while he was embalming.
No.
Yes. And so that's what I remember most about him, besides being a great friend. And plus, he died from AIDS. If it's any reason, if you wouldn't believe that now, which doesn't surprise me now why he passed away from AIDS. So anyway, we did there was that individual, and then there was another guy who helped with making arrangements, and his favorite thing to do, and I don't know, and I don't think he realized he did it, but he did it every single time. You would ask him a question, say, "Hey, what do you think about the new procedures on the death certificates?" And he'd go, "What?" And then I would start asking the same question, but then he would answer it before I could answer the question, ask the question again. So I started, when I would talk with him, I started to give a question, wait for his what, and then wait for maybe 10 seconds for him to process the question, and then he would go ahead and answer it. But his idiosyncrasy was that immediately when someone asked him a question, he would respond with what? And
What?
then when you start, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, see, you got it. You got it right there. So he was the funniest guy there. And then there was before I finished with the final person, and this might be 9. I forgot about this person, but I wanted to tell you about him because he would get so uptight and angry about the simplest things.
Oh, really?
For instance, if a family comes in and they want to have a burial and he was meeting with them, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, too, though, but he was all money oriented. So he wanted to make sure that he met, have we talked about this before? It seems like we've talked about this where if he felt like he could make a good commission, that's the family he wanted to meet with.
You did talk about this guy.
And so anyway, I know and remember on many occasions where people would come in and if they were going to bury the person, why don't you just remember the clothing? Why don't you just remember bringing that in? And then without, I hope out of earshot of the families, he would say, yeah, another family forgot clothing. Yep, another family forgot to bring in obituary information. Yep, another family forgot whatever.
Oh.
And it's just, that was his attitude. And then the one that I want to focus on just a little bit today, older gentleman. And he obviously had been in the industry for years. And one of his favorite things to do would be to come up when I was embalming in the prep room. He would come up and no one really knew what to do with him. But he had been around the industry for so long that so many people knew him that they would come to the mortuary just because they knew him.
Oh, really?
And so even though he may not, and I'm going to give you an example here, but he would come up into the prep room while I'm embalming and he would just say, "Hey, Frank," and then he'd shuffle over to the sink area, wash his hands, hadn't touched a thing, washed his hands, and then he would walk over to his embalming license on the wall, and he'd point to it and smile, and then he'd walk out of the room. That's it.
What?
Yeah, that's all he would do. And when he has a family, when he started having families come in and they would specifically ask for him to help them, this is what he would do. He would sit behind the desk. He would ask for someone to come into the room with him, generally me. And then he would go ahead and say, "Well, why don't you just tell us what you need? Frank's going to write down everything that you want done, and we're just going to sit and talk." And so, an hour, 2 hours later, once it was all over with, he would walk them out to the door, and then he'd come back and he said, "Did you get all that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't forget anything." What?
Excuse me?
Yeah, exactly. So he was there just to kind of glean information. But his wife was to the point, she had passed away a little bit after I had actually started working there. And you could almost tell he was starting to get up in years. He would have to take a taxi to work because he wasn't safe driving. So where he couldn't drive his car out on the streets, what would be the next best thing? It's a cemetery. So you get on a golf cart.
Oh, no.
So you get in a golf cart.
Can't stop me from driving the cart.
That's exactly right. So you get in the golf cart and you start tooling around the cemetery. And there's someone doing some work over there. Let's go see what he's doing.
Oh, my God.
So he pulls up onto the cemetery and he starts weaving in and out of the markers, or the headstones, of course. And then gets too close to the open grave site, and the guys are stop, and he just keeps going, and he's ruined 2 or 3 golf carts because he pulls right into the grave.
What? He's ruined 2 or 3, and they still let him?
2 or 3, yes. And I'm telling you and I don't know if he ruined them, but they would have to get the backhoe and pull the thing out of there. And he was always okay because they've got that steel frame on him. So
Uh-huh.
he would just feel like, and then he'd start laughing. He'd step out of the cart and he'd be waiting at the bottom of the grave, waiting for them to pull the cart back. And then, of
So
course,
he can do
pulling
it
him
again.
up. Yes. On one of these occasions, his friend, one of his good friends, came in and had told him that his wife had died. And so he, of course, went on ahead and made the arrangements. And the guy had one specific request. Holly, what kind of, you've been to enough, maybe you haven't, but have you been to enough funerals that you would recognize what are probably the two most used scriptures on a funeral? If you had to guess, what would they be?
Oh, my mind went blank except for the one that they always use at weddings. The love is in Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind, all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that is true. They do use that one, but the two that I'm thinking of most are the Lord's Prayer,
Oh, yeah, of course.
and because of Catholic religion, and then
Uh-huh.
the other one is the 23rd Psalm.
Mhm.
And so I would think, and so as we go through services, when I hear the Lord's Prayer being pronounced, I always recite it with them.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting if you take time to actually listen to and recite the Lord's Prayer. It is really touching when you start thinking about the characteristics that God would want you to do and exemplify to your fellow man.
Mhm.
And then, of course, the 23rd Psalm. So I remembered sitting in this arrangement conference with this older gentleman and my friend who worked with me and taking notes. And this gentleman looked at my friend, the counselor, and said, I want you to be prepared to recite the 23rd Psalm. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I made the note and we were set to go. So he went on ahead and left and services were set for the following Friday. I know it was a weekend. It might have been Saturday. And I remember talking to my friend almost every single day. Hey, have you got the 23rd Psalm down? Yes, I know it by heart. Don't worry about it. I said, okay. Next day, hey, do you have the 23rd Psalm down? I told you I have it. It's good. Don't worry about it. So we went on ahead and the full week went by totally busy. And it was one of those very busy days where you just kind of, or weeks where you just kind of take a breath at the end of the day and hope no one else comes through the door.
Right.
And so I looked at Ralph on that the eve of the funeral, and I said, hey, don't forget, your friend has asked that you recite the 23rd Psalm. You set? You good for that? He said, I am, Frank, and I appreciate you keep reminding me and telling me, but I'm set. I'm ready to go. And I said, okay. So I said, I won't bother you about it anymore. Well, the day of the service came, and he was busy hobnobbing with every one of his friends that were coming through and taking time to say, hey, how you doing? It's good to see you. Glad you're here. Thanks so much for coming. And then everybody was seated in the church that was owned by the funeral home as well. And the minister had gotten up and started the service, and it was a beautiful service. And then he made one announcement. He said, a friend of the deceased will now come forward and recite the 23rd Psalm. So I watched him shuffle to the podium, and I was right there because he and I were working the service, of course, since we had been together making the arrangements.
Right.
So we were working the service together, and he stood up, and he started with, hello, I am so grateful for this family and the opportunity which I have to play such a small part in this service. I just want the family to know how much they mean to me and how much I love them. So let me go ahead and begin. Our Father, who art in heaven.
Oh, no.
Hallowed be thy name. My face just went white.
Oh, my God.
And I went up to the podium and I whispered, and Ralph just kind of startled, looked at me as I was coming up to the podium, and he gets a little startled, and I just whispered in his ear, you're reciting the Lord's Prayer.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, what? Right in the microphone, what?
What?
I said, Ralph, you're reciting the Lord's Prayer. He said, oh, how does the 23rd Psalm start? I said, the Lord is my shepherd. And I whispered it to him. And he goes, what? I said, the Lord is my shepherd. He said, are you sure? I don't know that one.
I don't know that one. I can't recite that one. Oh my God.
So he looks at the microphone, he looks at the congregation, and I think everyone's kind of aghast. And then he looks at the he leans into the microphone, he says, obviously I was prepared with the wrong prayer. So
oh my God.
I'm gonna ask my friend Frank to recite the 23rd Psalm. And I'm looking at him, what?
Like, I know how it starts. I don't know how it goes.
No, and so I went on ahead and I recited it.
Good.
And everything went fine. And then Ralph, after I had sat down, he stood up, or as I was leaving the podium, he stood up and he goes, even though I wasn't quite prepared off of a special request that the husband had asked that I do, I hope that they'll still love me and appreciate me for who I am.
They're going, yeah, no, get out of here.
Yeah.
You're done.
Oh my. Oh, anyway, so the next day he came up and he thanked me for covering for him about the 23rd Psalm. And he goes, well, I could have swore that it was that the Lord's Prayer.
Oh my gosh.
No, they're two different things. And I said, did the husband call and talk to you about anything? And he said he did call me. And he said to me, he was very kind. But he said to me, he said, it seems like your age and my age are catching up with us. And that just kind of caught me off guard. Not that his age would have caught me off guard, but that someone would have recited that to him. So I think that it caught my friend off guard, recognizing that something that he didn't want to recognize ever in the industry, because he'd been in the industry probably 50 years. Because at that point, he was probably close to 80. I think it made him seriously consider hanging it up. So,
yeah.
I don't know that he did by the time I had quit and left there, he was still working there. But the idea of him at that age still doing that and still being asked to recite, I don't know if a lot of people, coffiners specifically, know, but funeral directors can handle services fairly well. If the family just looked at them and said, would you mind handling the service for us? I would say yes, I'll do it.
Yeah, you can plan it for them even. Yeah,
plan it for them and actually act as the minister for them.
Uh-huh.
Offering words of condolence to the family and also talking a little bit, of course they have to feed you a little bit of information regarding the deceased. But on a number of times I've been called on to actually preside over, conduct, and actually maintain a funeral service. And so there are a lot of things that could be done. And so it's not something that's actually taught in school, but it is something that they should be, and most maybe a lot aren't comfortable to do it. They would just say, no, I'm not going to do it. But I think a lot of families do appreciate it when you can actually step in and serve as a dual
help in that way.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's my story about idiosyncrasies with different people that I've run into in the funeral industry, and I just remember, and everyone has their own. It's very interesting, but I always remember, and I always think back to the first place I ever worked, officially being paid as a funeral director, and what I saw there with my own employees, with the employees that I worked with. And there were others there too that some had things that I would never repeat. But I I just found it interesting that when you actually take a look at things that people do, and they do it without realizing it, but they do it.
Right.
And I was thinking, there was something that I do constantly that I couldn't remember what it was. And maybe I'll have to bring it up on another episode, but I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's one of my idiosyncrasies because I do that all the time.
Yeah, or even just the podcast itself has opened our eyes to some things that we do constantly. Like I'm always saying, oh my gosh.
Yeah. We're going to add that to a t-shirt.
Yeah.
But people, when they read it, they won't think, oh my gosh, as far as Holly's saying it, they'll think, oh my gosh, you got to listen to this podcast. Yeah.
Only our coffiners will know the truth.
For the first time.
For the first time.
But yeah, there is some things that are will never be, I mean, they just won't change.
Yeah.
You can look at the idiosyncrasies of a lot of different people that you come into contact with, and maybe if you have some idiosyncrasies that coffiners that you want to share with us, that would be fantastic too. And maybe not laugh at, but just joke a little bit about what you yourself do. It's kind of fun to see. It's kind of fun to see and take note of. So anyway, any other comments on that story, Holly?
Well, I think with that story, we've learned that you can ask funeral directors to help with the services, but you might want to second guess. Or at least make sure they're prepared.
Oh my gosh. I guess don't take their word for it.
Yeah, seriously.
I know what I'm doing, Frank. I know what I'm doing.
Oh, I know.
So anyway, I'll just tell this one thing, that this particular individual, towards the end of my time with them, he took me out to the cemetery and showed me one particular marker that I'll probably never forget. And of course, we were in the golf cart. He was driving.
So this was after you got out of the open grave?
Yeah, a couple of times after him getting out, not me. He was always by himself. And I don't know if he did it just to think or what, but
oh man.
Anyway, he took me up to it was a nice headstone. The headstone read, "My life's work surrounds you."
Oh.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, that's interesting, because the guy that actually started the mortuary cemetery combination, which I worked at, had been buried there, right in the center of that cemetery. And I just thought that was very apropos. And I just thought, who could say that? Seriously, if you look at your own life, and I've always tried to live my life to the point where I could say, hey, you know what? No matter where I am, my life's work is surrounding me.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone could ever do that. But of course, he's not moving around anymore. But so he is buried right there in the cemetery. But I've always thought of that. And when I think about doing new things in life, I'm thinking, so what kind of impact does that leave on other people that I associate with?
Right.
So anyway, just found that interesting. And then on that same occasion, there's a crematory on the site of the cemetery. And I do have to tell you this, because this is funny about him as well. But he saw some smoke coming up out of the stack.
Uh-huh.
And he said, oh my gosh, the crematory's on fire. And so he says, Frank, get in, we gotta go.
Gotta go, get in the cart.
And so, we rushed over to the crematory, and there it was, of course, someone being cremated. And, they didn't really care about the smoke then as much as they do now. So, yeah, they would kind of smoke all the time. But anyway, that's my story of my first relationship and first encounters with individuals working in the funeral industry. And they've been working there for easily, probably accumulated between probably 150, 160 years.
Oh my gosh.
So it was very interesting to see them interact. And anyway.
Well, I think that's great. You've got a lot of characters there.
Yeah.
If nothing else. Oh my gosh. But
there it is.
Yep, there it is.
There it is. What the?
We'll just go ahead and end there. But thank you everyone for tuning in again to another episode of Coffin Talkin'. Share this with your friends, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Coffin Talkin'. Send us a DM or send us an email at letsbefrank@coffintalkin.com. Thank you.
Bye, Coffiners.
Bye.
Bye.